As a younger, cooler, less YouTube-ravaged soul, I lived, breathed, and banged my head against the snottiest walls of sound I could find. Punk, hardcore, art punk, post-hardcore, post-punk, emo-core, skate punk, and all the derivatives and offshoots born of 4 chords and a blistering chorus. I could talk about the music for days on end, but this is a film channel and not a basement show. There have been a bunch of movies that sprinkle band cameos between stabs of a catchy soundtrack, and while I don't have anything against these efforts, in those instances punk is treated as a texture rather than substance. On the other hand, you've got the likes of Rock and Roll High School starring the Ramones. It's a silly, enjoyable slice of cult cinema, but its very existence flies in the face of its own messaging. You can't really decry the man, rampant commercialization of art, and the vacuous nature of celebrity, whilst headlining a self-aggrandizing cash grab that's more brand management than anti-fascist takedown. And it's this sort of hypocrisy that makes punk so difficult to encapsulate out with its original musical medium. How do you define and delineate a lifestyle that rarely adheres to any consistent logic?
Wait a minute. What in the fuck are we doing?
Several documentaries have probed these pits looking for answers, each offering candid and conscientious warts and all history lessons, but Penelope Spheris' The Decline of Western Civilization Parts 1 and 3 are the landmark cultural artifacts of punk rock. They capture the acrid, exhilarating youth movement with an eye that's at once willing to overlook childish snarls, whilst focusing in on the freeing noise and pervasive nonsense of it all. You've got disenfranchised young adults who meticulously style their anarchic fashion into painstaking thrift store amalgamations, only to chastise anyone out with their bubble for being image conscious.
Most of the people are like posers, they're just wimpy.
Concert-goers talk of coming together in the name of diversity and inclusivity, only to splinter off into cells of predatory behaviour and unconscionable conduct.
I'd probably hit lots of girls in the face. I don't like girls very much.
Yes, that was now multi-millionaire Pat Smear of Nirvana, Foo Fighters and Germs, nonchalantly talking about beating women.
Is the time up now?
Too often, cinematic depictions of this most uncinematic of styles end up glamorizing these more revolting corners of the ecosystem with nothing to say beyond, "Look how dangerous this music is!" So, how do you take something as contradictory, calamitous, and utterly cathartic as punk, and do it justice with a camera?
Fuck.
One way is to toss out the structure and bring in the nihilism with 1984's Repo Man. Alex Cox's hodgepodge of cigarette smoke and stained upholstery is a shard of glass in the cereal bowl for the major studio who had the ignorance to release it. There's an anti-authoritarian streak a mile wide, from vaporizing cops and middle fingers to management, whilst frequently acknowledging the blatant inconsistencies of the punk ethos.
Fuck you.
Otto, in all his slam-dancing, beer-swilling abandon, takes up the Repo Man role to try and escape the generic brands of Reagan's America. He does this by suiting up and stripping the working class of what little possessions they have, dodging the cold slap of poverty by strapping on the iron boot of capitalism. Repo Man's Los Angeles setting is one of displacement and urban collapse, coughing up the bile of gentrification, vast economic divides, rampant crime, and racial tensions. Whether or not the layers of social satire and punk bravado are even intentional is up for debate. All the director had to say on the matter is, "I don't really know. I don't think of it in terms of a specific thing." And that refusal to commit only strengthens its carefree charm. With a blunderbuss spirit as brash and unfocused as the cliché punks that litter the car parks and convenience stores, our hero is a creature of impulse, jumping from one frying pan to the next because, well, fuck it, there's nothing better to do.
See, an ordinary person spends his life avoiding tense situations. Repo Man spends his life getting into tense situations. Assholes.
This is no frills, all thrills filmmaking, where ideas and attitude supersede such petty concerns as plot. Its mono audio, minuscule budget, and sparse character motivations are electrifying and of the moment. Morality is moot, sex is casual and consensual, and the only purity is that of complete abandon. After all, if you're going to wage a futile war against the fundamentals of American existence, you may as well have a good time doing it. In the wake of Repo Man's acidic attitude, there was an immediate uptick in punk representation on film. Not just in regards to the music and costume design, but the take no prisoners apocalyptic party of circle pits and bloodshed. Return of the Living Dead seethes with a lawless disregard for societal conventions before spray painting graffiti over its influences.
Razor, I'll blow your fucking brains out!
Send more cops.
Everything Troma put out had a tasteless, trash-breathed chuckle at the expense of tradition and sensible norms, and Hated managed to catalogue the truly despicable with just the wrong amount of fecal matter. But it wasn't until 1998's SLC Punk, where, for the first time since Repo Man, the central tug-of-war at the heart of punk was also the crux of its narrative conflict.
And this impending sense that my philosophies, anarchy, was falling apart. What do you do when your foundation falls apart? I don't know. They'll teach you that in school.
Steve-O, all garish hair, 7-inch singles and abrasive attitude, is your prototypical rebel without a cause.
Hey, what are you staring at? Did you get a good picture?
But rather than letting this hostility towards the mainstream play out unchallenged, SLC Punk gives this token 80s suburban outsider just enough leeway to love and just enough rope to hang himself.
I love you guys. Don't get me wrong. It's all about this. But for the first time in my life, I'm 18 and I can say, fuck you!
What James Merendino's only decent film truly understands better than most is that you can't celebrate or come close to capturing the nebulous nature of punk without acknowledging that, for as essential and important as this scene is and was, a great deal of the punk mentality has always been completely full of shit.
You want to be an individual, right? You look like you're wearing a uniform. I mean, you look like a punk. That's not rebellion. That's fashion.
Then what's rebellion?
Rebellion happens in the mind. You can't create it. You just are that way.
Right.
And you know what? That's fine. SLC Punk isn't a put down or hindsight driven calling out of all the ways this movement doesn't make sense. It understands that sermonizing, myth-making, and party-hard anecdotes all go hand in hand. Punk can be a phase, a lifestyle, a fashion, a genre, a projection, and a rebellious banner on which to hang friendships and affiliations, but there's no set code or consensus as to what is or isn't punk.
Talking about who started punk rock music. Was it Sex Pistols in England? Was it the Ramones and the Velvet Underground in New York? Was it the Ramones and the Sex Pistols? Who cares who started it? It's music.
While Repo Man, SLC Punk, and a select few others acknowledge and approach the try-hard ambivalence and simmering rage that makes punk so fascinating, neither are particularly concerned with the dark underbelly born of the same unchecked anger and unfocused animosity. For that, we need to step inside 2016's Green Room.
Out the way.
There aren't many films that touch on the glamourless, humiliating despair that sits alongside the camaraderie and unpredictability of a no-money van tour quite as well as Green Room. The couch-surfing, cringe conversation-having revelry of its band, the Ain't Rights, playing abrasive songs for absent audiences, it's an unshowered yet accurate look at the daily grind of working indie musicians. And that's before writer-director Jeremy Saulnier stamps on the overdrive pedal in the second act and takes us all to hell. Out come the knives, Nazis, and never more terrifying Patrick Stewart to ruin everyone's good time.
Let him bleed.
These fringe groups that fester within this community have been there since the beginning and are becoming even more pronounced, taking the against-the-grain anti-authoritarian slant of punk and somehow coming out that other end with "Yay, white supremacy!" Fucking pricks. This is the most jarring and shameful display of this bile-filled byproduct since 1992's Romper Stomper. With their skin-headed introduction, Green Room is directly pitting two conflicting facets of punk against one another. This isn't just an antagonistic band's fight for survival. It's the violent manifestation of the long-standing conflict between two halves of the same coin. The apathetic but decent individuals who want equality for all and authority for none, versus the gnarled, grotesque elitism of red-laced hatred. The film's most charming scene, and one of the few that isn't extremely horrible, is when our protagonists drop their affectations and armour of indifference long enough to admit they're scared, they're fallible, and goddammit, some pop music's really good.
Alright, fuck it. Simon and Garfunkel. Desert Island Band.
Prince.
This aspect is, to me, the most hopeful thing about punk. Not the boys' club bravado of sneering scattershot aggression. The humanity and guard-down willingness to oppose what's wrong. The strength in numbers and shared bonds of fast songs and creatively channeled rebellion.
You know, maybe you're like, don't have a family and you don't have friends, you don't have a place to stay, but here's an umbrella, you know, this umbrella of art or whatever you want to call it, of punk rock, and it's like a feeling of being loved, which is what everyone wants, you know?
Yeah. The three films I've highlighted here certainly aren't the only examples, and I didn't even have time to talk about my undying adoration for Hedwig and the Angry Inch. But they all offer their own cinematic takes on the same intangible style, flaunting their DIY determination, guttural truth, and safety-pinned potential with little to no consideration for current trends or marketability, highlighting the internal disputes and self-defeating garbage that so often derails the core values these characters claim to carry the torch for. Repo Man, SLC Punk, and Green Room get that the only thing more pointless than rallying against what isn't punk is trying to reach a consensus as to what is. So why not just go your own way, dress how you want, be your own person, and don't be a dick about it. A copy of The Argument, which is my favourite Fugazi record, for our Patreon producers, Jennifer C., Claire MD, Becky O, and Nicholas Lair Revere. And The Ugly Organ by Cursive is a perfect album for all these amazing folks who support us over on Patreon. For your money, what film do you think best encapsulates the highs and lows of punk rock? Let us know in the comments, and feel free to recommend any punk records from any of the infinite subgenres. Thank you so much for checking out this video, and if you'd like to help us grow, the best way you can do that is share our videos with your friends, pop them on social media, make sure you're subscribed, like, and leave a comment. It's so incredibly helpful and helps us keep on doing what we're doing. If you're in a position to do so, maybe also check out our Patreon at the link in the description below to get early access to videos, your name in the credits, membership to the In Frame Out Film Club, and access to our private Discord. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.